So, Rhodes, what is your opinion of the state of education in South Carolina today?
Um, the short answer is not good. But I do want to say, first of all, that, thank you guys for having me, SC for Ed. Thanks to Heather for being here. And congratulations on the anniversary of All Out May, right? Since the big, I was at that event, and I'll bet most of you guys were there too. It was really great. I even had friends that I knew from College of Charleston that drove up, educators from all over the state. Um, this is a make or break moment for education in our state. I'm really proud to see it and be a part of it. We had time to give a $115 million tax cut to the Carolina Panthers, and they rammed that through the end of session last year. But we didn't have a chance to give teachers a $3,000 raise. I am personally invested in public schools. My wife and I both went to public schools. I was in Florence School District 1. I went to College of Charleston for undergrad. I graduated from University of South Carolina, although I did my first year in New Orleans. But I was really pleased to graduate from law school here. But Katrina, my daughter, is at Meadowfield Elementary School, and we love it. We love Meadowfield. We are involved with her lesson plans. We text and talk back and forth with the teacher. When I go to pick up Katrina's schoolwork and sometimes to drop it off, they have posters that say, "We love our students." You can tell the teachers miss them. You can tell the teachers love them. And then they traded some of the homework. We gave them homework and they gave us little snacks. It was just really sweet. And you can really see it in their hearts. So, public education, when it comes to politics, it's very theoretical for a lot of leaders. Some of them don't have kids in public school. Unless you are an educator or maybe a close family member that's an educator or have children in the schools right now, it's still going to be kind of a theoretical discussion. And this is very much real to us. And it's very important to me and my wife. So the state of education is not good right now. Why? Well, we currently fund, South Carolina only pays $6,606 a year per student. And that is well below the national average. And that's a problem. But during the COVID-19 crisis, we've got all sorts of other problems, right? Heather did a good job of explaining the gap that's experienced and the inequity when it comes to certain schools in certain regions. That's only going to get worse during the COVID-19 crisis because poor neighborhoods and poor kids are not going to have access to resources that make it better. And, we've got to pay attention to that. The answer is more people, less curricula. So the state of education isn't good. And unfortunately, with the next budget crisis, the recession, which may even end up looking more like a depression, a lot of what we're doing is going to be playing defense in the legislature and holding to the funding that we have right now.
What steps would you take? Maybe we'll skip to 3 since you kind of addressed funding and come back to 2. If elected, what would you do to address the funding of public education?
Well, I would kind of like to mention the steps a little bit. Address classroom sizes. Pay raise is important, but so is support. So we need pay raise, but we need more troops on the ground. We need more support inside the classroom. More people, less curricula. I heard one professor say, but we need to change the culture. I spoke to a teacher at AC Flora, and he said the smartest thing to me. He said, until our elected leaders treat our educators like partners rather than employees, the culture is not going to change. I have an idea for a program called State House to Schoolhouse. And this is my idea. My idea is that we take legislators and we put them in a classroom for 4 straight days. And we're talking, they sit with a teacher, they shadow a teacher like someone training education would shadow a teacher. They do it all day long. They go to all the meetings. This is not a photo op. You will not be allowed to tweet about it or post pictures of you with cute kids reading books. They're going to send you to a classroom. And obviously this isn't going to be mandated, but lawyers have to do things like continuing legal education. Doctors, nurses, all sorts of people go to conferences and they update their education. I think that we should have a strongly encouraged program where state legislators and other officials would actually go and do a week in a classroom so that they understand what it's about. You'd have to work it out. You'd have to talk to experts so that they're not a distraction. But this would not be a photo op, a campaign thing. This is so that we can really start to empathize and we can really have personal experience between elected officials and teachers on the ground. And again, we can fix that culture and make it a partnership rather than a a boss sort of employee thing. But I really think we could do it if we got experts together, state house to schoolhouse. And you know where I came up with that idea? Teachers, I've talked to dozens of them. They just said, if only the legislator could actually teach, or they could be here. Well, let's do it. Let's put them there. So that's my plan. Funding, right? I think did we? What's the next one? Funding. Okay. Yeah. The way to address funding, the short-term goal is we cannot go backwards. The 2008 financial crisis gutted us. Between 2008 and 2010, we lost 25% of funding. And then on top of that, we never really replaced it. My understanding is we are just now trying to get back to pre-2008 levels. Maybe the $3,000 raise would put us there. Maybe it wouldn't be enough, but maybe it would put us there. But that budget surplus, I mean, we haven't had a report from the Board of Economic Advisors yet, but that's gone. We've got to assume that so many of the good things we wanted to do with the budget surplus are gone because those were projected on revenues we don't have now. So what I think is that we have got to stop from slipping backwards. We cannot go. We can't go. We cannot slip back any further. We need to get back to pre-08 funding. Again, $6,606 a year spent on students in South Carolina. I could talk more about waivers. You know, we're getting some money from the feds, and that's good, but we have to maintain 90% of our state funding to keep that level, to keep the Fed money coming in. And I think it would be a bad idea to allow Molly Spearman, or we're encouraging Molly Spearman to not participate in these kinds of waiver situation, because what happens when the Fed money is gone, right? That we were taking Fed money, and then when it goes, we haven't been doing what we need to do with state money. So that's sort of a problem there. So we're going to fight. We got to play defense, but I think we can play some strong offense too.
Okay. What do you believe is the top issue surrounding public education in SC? Teacher
retention. Again, we need more support in schools. I think we need to pay teachers more. I think $3,000 is the least we can do, especially with the newer teachers. But we also need to look at percentage raises for veteran teachers, so we retain a lot of teachers that have that classroom experience and have that institutional knowledge. We need to get our teacher pay on the same as the national level, the national average, because we're below the national average right now. So retention, pay, more boots on the ground.
So I think you kind of touched on this, but considering how well educators have continued to provide instruction after the COVID pandemic canceled state testing and assessments, what are your opinions about accountability measures?
Well, I'm going to agree with Heather also that the testing standards were dated and subpar to begin with even before this. But this has really changed the ballgame. I homeschool every day. My wife and I swap off. We take turns who does math and reading. One of us blocks off a few hours and does some teaching, and then another one blocks off and does teaching. It is hard, man. It is hard. And listen, it's easier for us. We're lucky to have jobs where we can work from home. I can't imagine the people that are in rougher circumstances are losing their jobs. But it's hard to wrangle one 6-year-old, let alone 20. And I hate that it would take a pandemic for people to fully appreciate teachers and what they do for us. But I'm hoping that will be an advantage. The long and the short of it is, off the top of my head, I could name all my elementary school teachers through middle school, and then, high school, you got your homeroom teachers and all that stuff. I could just start naming them. Allen, Miss James, Miss Hunsucker, Miss Smith. Because these are teachers that touched my life and that I remember very specifically. And you don't remember the standardized tests, right? I've talked to other people and other parents, and they've been very happy with the lesson plans. Ours are very thorough. Ours are very involved, and they have been available. The teachers have been available. And I think this shows that we have to improvise, and we have to let the teachers do their job and not test them to death.
What role should the state play in regard to private or charter schools?
I'm opposed using public funds that should go to public schools private schools. I'm opposed to it.
Okay. Did anybody else have any questions? If there aren't any other questions, we could end with this, but I'd love to just hear any more specifics, because I agree with what you've both said about funding, and that this crisis is going to change funding going forward. We will have one more question after this, but so any other specific ideas about where that, because there are going to be some hard decisions, I think, in the next budget, and in a lot of budgets to come. Where would we find that money, or what are some specific things we could do to reprioritize or put that money where it needs to go in schools? Rhodes, you want to answer that one first?
Sure. Budget fights are complicated, but what we have to do is we have to cut wasteful spending in certain areas, and we've got to investigate where dollars are going. There's been a lot of investigation recently about pet projects from legislators, and state money going to like a legislator's wife's golf course, or people using their businesses, or it's in the news. We've all seen it. Then there's also the Department of Commerce was spending millions of dollars to subsidize, out-of-state businesses. So, the trick is to go everywhere where we're misspending, because I believe in funding public education. I care about it. I'm emotionally and personally invested in public education. I'm not one of these people that says you can't just throw money at it. You know why? Because we're not throwing money at it. Our spending levels are very low, but we need to fund it. But we've got to make sure that wasteful spending in other areas are taken care of, so we can use that money to fund stuff that matters, like public education. So, we've got to look around, and we've got to see where we're wasting money, because we are wasting money. We're wasting it on stupid stuff, and we're not spending it on our children and our teachers.
Okay. And I think the last question we had, unless we get any more, was about school. Well, it was kind of a two-part question about school safety. And what do you think should be the role of law enforcement in schools? Rose, do you want to answer that one first?
Sure. I deal with a lot of young kids. I'm at the public defender's office, and I've done that for a lot of years. Also defended and represented small businesses for a while, and I've dealt with family court stuff. I've had clients that were juveniles. The school to prison pipeline is a real thing that affects poor communities. I think that ever since, there were some new, events back in about the mid 2010s, everything from, Walter Scott or Trayvon Martin, there were a lot of discussions about the relationship that law enforcement has with citizens. And there have been some gains made. There's some people that are really working for kind of more of a community policing, culture. And that's good. You'll see the city of police does these roll calls where police officers come and they interact with kids and families. We probably need to do it in more neighborhoods, but they've been doing a better job at trying to at breaking down that separation between law enforcement and between community. The whole idea, they say protect and serve. You've got to serve too. And there are a lot of good resource officers that I'll meet at community meetings, like Officer Fryer from the CPD and a lot of other guys. And they really are trying to help people. They're doing more than what we think of as conventional law enforcement. And I think that's kind of the attitude we need in our schools. And, I see the sheriff's deputies that are at Katrina School at Meadowfield, and they're very pleasant and they're very helpful. The role should not be disciplinarian. I mean, that's not, when an officer comes just to be a disciplinarian, then it creates this us versus them culture. Then it separates the law enforcement, and it's less about community. So, you need officers there for safety. Absolutely. But I think if we can maintain, communication and make law enforcement more approachable and accessible, which I think a lot of people are moving in that direction. That's the role of law enforcement in schools is service, developing a relationship with kids, especially in lower income areas, that they feel that they're cooperating for a safe school, as opposed to, this separation.
I think that's all we have time for. I really appreciate both of you. Thank you for doing this on a Friday, and we will make sure to put this in a place where more people can see it. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
Thank you guys. Thank you, OC Fred.
Thank you.